Hello, I'm Spaghetti, and today is more Dungeons and Dragons stories from the internet. Let's get started. The story of how a level 4 sorcerer managed to one-shot a horde of around 20 undead, which our DM thought we would have a hard time surviving, almost single-handedly. Little context. Our party consists of 2 level 4 PCs and 3 NPCs. While 5 party members would make this a little easier, they rolled pretty badly, so they were pretty much negligible in this fight. The other party member was a paladin, and although she was very helpful with single target damage against a very tanky mini-boss, AoE damage isn't her strong suit. We entered the town full of undead, which we are supposed to free from undead. I don't think I need to say that walking straight into a town of undead, Leroy Jenkins style, was a stupid idea. Well, we got rushed down pretty quickly and were quickly overwhelmed by around 30 enemies. We managed to kill some before we realized we were being overrun, at which point I asked our DM for the exact proportions of our paladin's tower shield, to which our DM answered rather confused, but quickly a plan started to form in my head, and it might just be crazy enough to work. I tell the party to fall back to the city gate and for our paladin to place her tower shield horizontally. We ran through the gate, and when the last person came through the gate, I cast one of my favorite spells, Enlarge. My dungeon master went through a short period of, can he do that? And after checking that Enlarge can in fact target objects, he slowly realizes that the encounter he thought of as being very difficult was probably over very soon. My plan was taking form as I waited for all the undead to pile up in front of the improvised gate. After they had all piled up, I gave up concentration and jumped straight into the collapsing wave of undead, casting Maximize Thunder Wave on 2nd level. The corpses went flying as the thunderous boom filled the air, and all that was left standing was a single figure, the Dragonborn Sorcerer. How the party managed to kill a vampire via alcohol poisoning. Our party consisted of me, the DM, and 5 other players, a Celestial Warlock, a Champion Fighter, an Eldritch Knight Fighter, a Whispers Bard, and a Drunken Master Monk. When the story started, it was the reliable, you meet in a tavern, and the monk went berserk. He said, "This is where I belong." And we all had a pretty good laugh. So he looked around the tavern to find the biggest guy, which happened to be a barbarian Goliath. The monk goes up to him and asks if he wanted to do a drink contest. They agree, and I had them roll a d20 to see who will drink a pitcher of the strongest ale they have. The Goliath rolls a 4, and the monk rolled a natural 20. I said that he shotgunned the entire pitcher before the Goliath was even able to take a sip. The monk realized pretty quickly that it was pure moonshine that he had shotgunned. We made a joke about his bloodstream being replaced with an alcohol stream, and the monk starts role-playing drunk off his ass. The campaign I had was about a vampire king trying to take over the material plane, so vampires were very prominent. The first dungeon comes along. An abandoned warehouse that had a secret basement that just seemed to be going down forever. When the party enters a small offhand room, a vampire casts a darkness spell in the center of the room to try and ambush the party. The vampire tries to bite the monk. Out of character, the monk jumped up and asked if the vampire could make a constitution save because his blood was just moonshine from the memeing earlier on. We laugh, and I say sure. Vampire rolled a natural 1. Everyone is losing their mind, and I say that the vampire dies from the immediate assault that his liver just encountered. A drunken master monk just inadvertently killed a vampire that tried to bite him by alcohol poisoning. He says that it was his favorite experience that he's ever had in 3 years. Best bardic kill I've ever had. We were facing this giant gelatinous cube that was slowly moving down the hallway, so we all ducked in a different room, all of which had zombies. Everyone else killed the zombies in their room, but I charmed and suggested they fight with me while also being my backup dancers. From there, I taught them the moves to Thriller with my +13 performance. Once the cube went to my door in the hallway, I stepped out and went to the far end of the hall, cast Ice Storm, and the cube froze by the next round. To which I started singing and performing Thriller down the hallway with the zombies as my backup dancers. And at the first, "Cause this is Thriller," I cast Shatter, and the giant frozen gelatinous cube shattered and crumbled before us. Bardic performance kills are my favorite. How my necromancer turned a combat into a massacre without rolling a single attack. So I'm the DM in a campaign me and a few friends are currently running, and the party consists of an elf fighter, a homebrew owl man cleric barbarian, a homebrew dino man monk, and an undead necromancer who disguised himself as a kobold. Early in the campaign, I had them set to fight a few enemy necromancers who were hiding out in the basement of an inn, where they were performing a ritual. Ooh. So the party sneaks down the stairs and starts to witness them performing the ritual. Recognizing what the necromancers were trying to do, our necromancer decided to change into his undead form, revealing his true appearance to the party, and sneak into the middle of the ritual. He rolls a natural 20. Raising from the ground like he was just summoned, he then convinces the necromancers that he is death itself, and that by summoning him, they not only gain him, but the armies of the underworld as well. He then pulls out his scythe and opens a portal to the underworld by cutting through the air with it. Just to clarify, the campaign is about gods and our necromancer is the son of Hades, and the scythe was a gift to him from his father. He then tries to convince the necromancers to step through the portal into the fiery pits of hell to, quote, pick out their minions. He rolls another natural 20. He then closes the portal behind them, never seeing them again. On top of this, on the way out, he tosses an obolus, a coin to cross the river Styx, to the receptionist, effectively telling her to go to hell without her knowing. Player character rolls a natural 1 on animal handling. Wins horse race on foot. I remember a time at school where one of my player characters was in a horse race. Halvard Eriksson, the human barbarian, had a tiny horse. So tiny that it was almost comical for him to ride it. So, I get him to roll animal handling. Natural 1. He gets flung off. He then proceeds to fucking pick up his tiny ass horse and start running. He was Eagle Totem, so he could move at a whopping 120 feet per round. The same as the horses. The other racers were so surprised that they crashed into the barriers. Halvard proceeds to win the fucking race on foot. My party just killed the major boss early by throwing him into a mountain at supersonic speed. First, let me set the stage. The party, 6 players, currently level 6, arrived in the city and almost immediately things began to fall apart. Basically, everyone in the party had issues with authority figures. The local guards are largely either complete assholes, corrupt, drunk, incompetent, or some combination of those. Just trying to get into the city was a nightmare combination of a TSA security checkpoint and mugging. Of course, the local merchant class is much more reasonable. Initially attempting to trade with the nobleman half-elf, an orc slave in exchange for buying the Dragonborn and Kobold party members. That man was set on fire for his trouble. This is made worse when several party members, a half-orc, a kobold, and another, try to sell some gems they found as loot and were scammed or outright robbed. The man who tried robbing the kobold was killed for his trouble. Oh, also the halfling was nearly lynched at one point. Good times. The party ends up seeking out a group of revolutionaries hidden in the sewers, somewhat by accident and while seeking a different group, the anarchists, and end up embroiling themselves in a rebellion taking place within the city. They end up having to help their new friend when a group of guards and soldiers try to come down into the sewers to flush them out. Their friends start to evacuate. All seems to be well. The party sidesteps a TPK. Unfortunately, the king doesn't much care for this whole rebellion thing, and has other options, such as the Inquisitor, a high-level archmage who runs the secret police, consider himself to be above the law, and is just an all-around jerk. He very kindly introduces himself and his 2 mage killer guards, and their pet displacer beasts, by throwing a fireball at the party from around a corner, instantly dropping one party member to 0 hit points and severely wounding another. To be fair, they decided that rather than warning the party, they should stick their heads around the corner and try to see the loud scary noises heading towards them. What followed was a very tense fight with, among other things, a displacer beast fighting 1v1 with the polar bear, an asshole archmage teleporting around while invisible and chucking fireballs at the party, a kobold running around chucking lightning bolts at things while trying to run like hell, 2 party members beyond the first being knocked unconscious, so much more. It was chaos. A large party trying to hold a choke point against an intelligent foe that is smart enough to retreat and use healing potions if they're in danger. Adding to the chaos, we also didn't actually have our dungeon board, since the guy who usually brings it was sick that day, so we ended up using a whiteboard in the room we used and just eyeballing distances. In the end, the party did remarkably well for themselves, but with 2 party members downed, the rest incredibly low, the kobold having run off to make damn sure that one specific dude died, and an archmage appearing behind them preparing to cast Cone of Cold, the party elected to surrender. Kind of. A bit of context. A side effect of how I run my games as a sandbox is that balance is kind of all over the place. The party generally has a good read on how tough a fight will be, but it helps reinforce the idea that the world doesn't exist for the party, they're just participants in everything else that's going on. To mitigate the ridiculousness of this, the party has a number of homebrewed legendary tier magic items to give them a fighting chance of surviving if everything falls apart. One of these items is an artifact with a get the fuck out ability attached to a banner that can be planted into the ground. After a brief delay, it will plane shift everything in a short range to a plane of energy, then spit them back out elsewhere. In a bout of remarkable pragmatism, the party manages to surrender, minus the kobold who got dropped by a fireball for his trouble, then staged a reason to gather around the banner and activate it. After surviving 2 turns of the mage throwing everything he had at the party, they escaped. The kobold, shockingly, managed to come back with 1 HP and made his own escape via the sewers. A short time and one incredibly tense displacer beast fight on a tiny platform of force energy in an elemental plane, the party, including the kobold eventually, all ended up on a ship heading out to sea. So the party escaped? Everyone lived? They're potentially hundreds of miles away? Things are good, right? Things are not good. About 1 hour, 3 rounds of healing, and 1 irritated healer later, the half-orc realizes a problem. His banner, which had stuck itself into the ship when they landed, has started having electricity arc off of it into the ship, and the gem on top that handles the teleport bit of getting the hell out of Dodge is glowing. Panic shortly sets in as the party realizes that the Archmage seems to have managed to connect to their artifact, turn the magic inside out, and is either trying to pull them back or pull himself towards them. Even with the healing, the party is still extremely low on health and have burned through almost all their abilities. Since they thought they were safe, only 1 player actually bothered to take a short rest. Suffice to say, it looks like the party is screwed. The tables turn. Funny thing about players, they're clever. Damn clever. After a few minutes of trying desperately to sever the connection, then to slow him down, one of the players gets the novel idea to try to sabotage the spell he's using by helping him along and making him miss. You see, such a spell isn't simply teleport. It's a whole series of underlying magics, evocation to channel force energy to make a bubble to travel with, and to channel lightning to remotely power the artifact with, necromancy to keep his soul together during transit and reattach it to his body with each plane shift, transmutation to form his body after each shift and keep it intact, and conjuration for the taking something someplace else and bringing it here aspect. It was with this idea that the players laid out a trap. By having the kobold fire his last lightning bolt into the artifact, they could increase the power in it and hopefully make the Archmage move more quickly. They used a touch of necromancy to invert cure wounds, and instead of healing, enchanting a bomb provided by the party's resident freedom fighter to slightly attract towards things with wealth. A druid used a spell much like fairy fire to flood the plane with magic-like antibodies that would clump to the Archmage, allowing the bomb to find him more easily, and the bard cast silence into the other plane to prevent him from being able to shift back. The end result: the Archmage failed all his saves. Between burning a lot of spells earlier, having to deal with what amounted to a missile seeking him out in the plane he was in, someone messing with his conjuration magic, and being silenced for a brief moment, he never stood a chance. He was spat back out a short distance past his original target, far faster than he ever intended, just as a grenade blew up in his face. He was airborne for a brief moment, before flying directly into a mountain. The end result was an impact that blew the mountain he hit in half, knocking the top 100 feet or so off the mountain next to a boat, and nearly capsized the boat itself. My point of view as the DM. Honestly, this guy was meant to be a traditional boss fight. Minions, great gear, and so on. That being said, the creative way that the party turned a boss fight into a puzzle boss was absolutely amazing. And it was a real treat running the session and watching them ruin all my carefully laid plans. A mage and a spoon, and a bowl. A high-level mage teamed up with the usual bunch, but liked to challenge himself by choosing lower-level equipment. This time around, he chose a magical camping survival kit. It had a tent, ropes, cooking pot, and 2 special items: a spoon of hunger and a plate of heating. Upon saying, "Feed me," the spoon would fill the pot, or any bounded container, with gruel, with the plate saying, "Heat me," would bring the pot or any fluid-containing object to a rolling boil. Meat would be cooked to medium rare, bread would be toasted, and so on. So on our heroes went to find the dragon's hoard and recover the missing quest MacGuffin, and eventually they find the dragon, who's cranky, as expected. Battle ensues, adventurers fell, and the mage faced the dragon alone. Being rather proud of himself, the dragon gloated a bit, cursing the weaklings who dared to venture into his domain. And so with the great and final laugh, the dragon took a deep breath to incinerate the trespassers. And the mage held up the spoon, said, "Feed me," and threw it at the dragon's mouth. The dungeon master rolled. The dragon inhaled the spoon. Now the dragon was doubled over and coughing as gruel started to fill his lungs. Now the mage threw the plate. "Eat me!" The dragon swallowed the plate, and now took direct fire damage internally. The dragon was taking 4d6 damage with every time step, unable to either breathe fire or effectively lash out at the party, who wisely moved to a safer distance. The party recovered and enjoyed a lengthy banquet of dragon haggis and steaks. The mage was awarded the teeth. And that, folks, is all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See ya!